everybody, and welcome to the Headphones On podcast. This is episode 3, and today is every single time, August 23rd, I do believe. Yes, August 23rd. And I have, yet again, our special guest, writer of How to Murder Your Entire Family. A step-by-step guide. William Botch.
Thanks for letting me be on this podcast. So I'm gonna have a question for you. What do you think about my book?
Well, I read it, and personally, I would have tried it, but I know that you're a very powerful man. You know, you've got money, you've got women, you've got cars, you've got a mansion, you know, you've got it all. And I aspire to have that. And I should also mention your recent cameo in the movie 2 Girls, 3 Cups at a party. And, yeah, you know, I feel like you should definitely be careful because I feel like the power may be going to your head.
You might be right about that one. I thank you for the advice. But I'm actually thinking about a new book idea. Any suggestions?
I would leave it to your, and I just put my hand on his shoulder so you can hear, feel, and imagine what I'm saying to him. I feel like you have such creativity that just let it flow, and you'll figure it out.
Okay.
So, let's get into today's topic.
All right.
Today's topic is... I don't have a topic.
You don't?
Why don't you come up with a topic? You are the guest.
Well, that's the thing. I'm sorry, it's the second time for me to be on the podcast, but what are the topics you usually talk about on this podcast?
You know, it's usually a lot of rants, but if there's particular people, they may have particular things, like, if it's someone whose expertise more into motor vehicles or any type of automobile, then it'd be more about cars. If it's
what about the weird voice that appeared last podcast?
Yeah, that was like an apparition or some sort of spirit that had entered our podcast, and you know what? I know what this podcast's topic is going to be about. This podcast's topic will be about podcasts. A podcast talking about podcasts. Inception.
So we're going to be talking about other people's podcasts.
Oh, no. I'm just talking about podcasts in general. So the first thing, now, this was going to be in Questionable Possibilities podcast, but the file had corrupted. So now I get to use the the statement on my podcast. But, you know, when you do a podcast, it has a special kind of feeling, you know? There's something about it that you genuinely feel. It gives, like, a certain feel in the air, like, you know, sometimes there'll be rants, and you'll get this serious tone in the air, and everything will be nice and serious. If it's something about reading something horror-like, the room will be tense. But with most podcasts, it's always a relaxed state, and because you're just around those people. But when someone barges in while you're in the middle of a podcast, it changes the overall tone. Like, if someone is to suddenly join into a podcast, the tone of it changes. And not only that, but then a lot of stuff gets repeated because of how they weren't there. So you're going to be making statements about other stuff, but they're going to be like, oh, what's that? What's happening? But more specifically, it's about how we were doing a podcast with questionable possibilities, and a young man by the name of Zachary had, without knocking or anything like that, had barged into the room, and then we made it funny because we started yelling, "Get out!" And it was funny because like everyone, like even you, William, was like, "Get out!" And he's like, "I just want to listen." And then it brings back to what I was saying, which it just changes the overall tone. And even though he did say that he was just going to listen, he's not going to just listen. He's also going to talk, and he's going to be loud.
He's going to be like, oh, what's this? What's that?
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about?
And, I get that, like, sometimes you just want to know what it's like to be, like, in or around a podcast.
I ended up asking him about stuff about the podcast, and he's like, oh, end of the world, I would love to have talked about that kind of stuff during it.
Yeah, but he would have had to been there from the beginning,
Yeah.
I will definitely let him, join a podcast eventually. But the problem is that, he...
has to be invited.
Yeah, first off, he has to be invited because podcasts are incredibly fun, at least to me, because, a podcast, we basically have podcasts, we just don't record them. Podcasts, or at least the ones that we do, are about, talking as friends.
Mm-hmm.
And, we basically do that, even if we're not recording it. So, if you just record it, free content.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely things that'll change, like how you would talk during it. Like, my voice gets a lot raspier and deeper when I do a podcast because it helps me not stutter as much. Well, I do stutter, but, like, at a controlled rate. And, like,
yeah,
you don't make as much word mistakes, and I talk a lot slower, and my lips smack a lot more, and all that. So, what would anything that you would like to talk about?
Not really. Even though I'm the special guest, I don't really talk a lot.
That is true. That is very true. Is there anything recent that has happened that you want to share about, or?
Not really.